Today, we're going to be looking at celebrity comic George Carlin, who deceived many people, even truthers, into believing he was an anti-establishment hero. But for those who understand how this world is actually run by Satanists, it's as clear as day that nothing could be further from the truth. Not only was he not even remotely anti-establishment at all, but he was just another puppet for the Satanic elite, which is the true establishment we all despise. And Carlin was a Satanist himself, as I'll show you. First, take a look at the Church of Satan celebrating George Carlin's comedy on their website. Next, listen to how his views mirror those espoused by the former first family of Satanism.
I have absolutely no sympathy for human beings whatsoever. None. And no matter what kind of problem humans are facing, whether it's natural or man-made, I always hope it gets worse.
We have no regard for the masses. Satanism is a religion for the elite. It is a religion for leaders. It's a religion for competent people. And you can take the weak,
it doesn't say that in the Bible.
You can take the decrepit, you can take people who can't help themselves. We don't want them. If you want to be around dying and sick people all the time, then you have every right to, but we are not obliged to help these people.
We're saving entirely too many lives in this country of all ages. Nature should be allowed to do its job of killing off the weak and sickly and ignorant people.
There was also a sea change with the acceptance of Darwin in how humanity was to view human death itself.
One of the most important ways that Darwinism revolutionized thinking about morality, especially relating to bioethics and medical ethics, was by introducing a new idea of what death is. The Judeo-Christian conception of death is that death is an enemy that is to be overcome and ultimately will be overcome through Christ. But the Darwinian vision is that death is a positive force that brings progress. And in fact, the more death, the more progress.
We're saving entirely too many lives in this country of all ages. Nature should be allowed to do its job of killing off the weak and sickly and ignorant people.
Dr. George Grant is the author of many books, including Grand Illusions, The Legacy of Planned Parenthood.
What Malthus argued was that it was a good thing to allow the poor and the undesirable aspects of populations to essentially kill themselves off through ill health and so forth. In fact, he actually argued that philanthropy and charity to the poor was bad for the human race because it allowed the breeding of what he called human weeds.
I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get sick, you're going to die, and you're going to deserve it because you're weak and you got a weak immune system.
The Nazis killed off tens of thousands of the chronically ill.
The Nazis began a so-called euthanasia program in 1939 when World War II began. And they carried these out by setting up 6 killing centers that was to get rid of people who had congenital illnesses of various sorts. Most of these were institutionalized people who were shipped from various institutions of Germany and to these 6 killing centers.
The whole idea of killing a large number of people at one time in one place is convenience, efficiency. Whatever happened to natural selection, survival of the fittest?
Natural selection was a guiding idea for Hitler and the Nazis.
We're saving entirely too many lives in this country of all ages. Nature should be allowed to do its job of killing off the weak and sickly and ignorant people. Whatever happened to natural selection, survival of the fittest?
The secrets of evolution are time and death. Time for the slow accumulation of favorable mutations, and death to make room for new species.
The whole idea of killing a large number of people at one time in one place is convenience, efficiency. Whatever happened to natural selection, survival of the fittest? When you see a big fire on TV, don't you hope it spreads? Don't you hope it gets completely out of control and burns down 6 counties?
Do you see how they use puppets like Carlin to subtly push their satanic views on the masses? What's interesting is, George Carlin's early comedy in the 1960s was very conventional. He had short hair and a clean style. He wore a suit on stage. It was only because his career was suffering that he hired a public relations firm who recommended the Anti-Establishment Act. And that's all it was, an act. This demonstrates people like Carlin are willing to do, or be, anything to taste worldly success, almost as if they have no soul or personality of their own. And that's the same reason why he willingly pushes satanic views. Narcissistic people will do anything for worldly success. Next, take a look at what he has to say about abortion.
Pro-life conservatives are obsessed with the fetus from conception to 9 months. After that, they don't want to know about you. They don't want to hear from you. No, nothing. I have absolutely no sympathy for human beings whatsoever. None. But you know, the longer you listen to this abortion debate, the more you hear this phrase, sanctity of life. You've heard that, sanctity of life. You believe in it? Personally, I think it's a bunch of Is a fetus a human being? This seems to be the central question. Well, if a fetus is a human being, how come the census doesn't count them?
As a doctor, I know, as do my colleagues, that life begins at conception.
Dr. Robert Sudmak delivers hundreds of babies a year in Hollywood, Florida.
That life begins at the moment of conception is no longer a matter of personal opinion. It is an established medical fact. And this fact is not in dispute in any reputable medical textbook anywhere in the world.
Now, you know where the sanctity of life came from? We made it up. Now, you know where the sanctity of life came from? We made it up. Now, you know where the sanctity of life came from? We made it up. They're not pro-life. You know what they are? They're anti-woman. Simple as it gets. Anti-woman. They don't like it. They don't like women. Here's another question I have. How come when it's us, it's an abortion, and when it's a chicken, it's an omelet?
Hitler was taking ideas of Darwinism in a certain kind of direction. An important point of Darwinism was that there is no distinction between humans and animals, at least no qualitative distinction.
Now, in case you're wondering why I have a certain interest and fascination, let's call it, with torture and beheadings and all of these things I've mentioned, it's because each of these items reminds me in life, every time one of them occurs, it reminds me over and over again what beasts we human beings really are. You know, when you get right down to it, human beings are nothing more than ordinary jungle beasts, savages. Are we so much better than chickens all of a sudden?
An important point of Darwinism was that there is no distinction between humans and animals, at least no qualitative distinction.
We're seeing a growing spiritual justification for abortion, a thinly veiled cover for ritual child sacrifice.
Think of an abortion as term limits. That's all it is. Biological term limits.
What? That's all it is. Biological term limits. Imagine being a propagandist for this. The propaganda is so blatant.
Think of an abortion as term limits. That's all it is. Biological term limits. Sanctity of life. You believe in it? Personally, I think it's a bunch of Now, you know where the sanctity of life came from? We made it up. It's a self-serving, man-made bullshit story. It's one of these things we tell ourselves so we'll feel noble. Life is sacred. Makes you feel noble. Well, let me ask you this. If everything that ever lived is dead, and everything alive is going to die, where does the sacred part come in? Well, I mean, life is sacred? Who said so? God?
The Judeo-Christian conception of death is that death is an enemy that is to be overcome and ultimately will be overcome through Christ. But the Darwinian vision is that death is a positive force that brings progress. And in fact, the more death, the more progress.
Sanctity of life. You believe in it? Personally, I think it's a bunch of think of an abortion as term limits. That's all it is. Biological term limits. We're saving entirely too many lives in this country of all ages. Nature should be allowed to do its job of killing off the weak and sickly and ignorant people. The whole idea of killing a large number of people at one time in one place is convenience, efficiency.
If you want to be around dying and sick people all the time, then you have every right to, but we are not obliged to help these people. We feel that the best way to change the world into a satanic arena is by having strong individuals in different areas do their own individual work.
So rather than be just another mindless religious robot, mindlessly and aimlessly and blindly believing that all of this is in the hands of some spooky, incompetent father figure who doesn't give a shit, I decided to look around for something else to worship, something I could really count on. And immediately I thought of the sun. Happened like that. overnight, I became a sun worshiper. Well, not overnight, you can't see the sun at night. First thing the next morning. First thing the next morning. First thing the next morning.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground? Isaiah 14. Here he is, dressed completely in black, in typical fashion, flashing the universal hand sign for Luciferian allegiance, the 666 hand sign. And no, just because others may use this same sign to mean other things, such as okay, that doesn't entail that Luciferians aren't using it to communicate their allegiance. They all do it.
We had great gifts, and we gave it all up for both man, for both money and God. God and mammon, both. We gave it all up to superstition, primitive superstition, primitive. There's an invisible man in the sky looking down, keeping track of what we do, make sure we don't do the wrong thing. If we do, he puts us in hell or we burn forever. That kind of is very limiting. It's very limiting for this brain we have.
And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3:4-5.
Thousands of years, and all the best wars too, the bloodiest, most brutal wars fought, all based on religious hatred, which is fine with me. Hey, anytime a bunch of holy people want to kill each other, I'm a happy guy. All right, next group, sex criminals. Completely incurable, you gotta lock them up. You could outlaw religion and most of these sex crimes would disappear in a couple of generations, but we don't have time for rational solutions. You won't see a lot of these pro-life people dousing themselves in kerosene and lighting themselves on fire. Light yourself on fire! Come on, you moral crusaders, let's see a little smoke to match that fire in your belly. Thou shalt not kill. Murder. The fifth commandment. But when you think about it, religion has never really had a big problem with murder. Not really. More people have been killed in the name of God than for any other reason. More people have been killed in the name of God than for any other reason. Think of an abortion as term limits. That's all it is. Biological term limits. That sanctity of life. You believe in it? Personally, I think it's a bunch of...
People are going to come out of the shadows and reveal themselves as thoroughgoing Satanists. Because what we're seeing now is the death struggle between the Judeo-Christian idea and archetype and the more ancient Satanic archetype. Well, whether you like it or not, in the future, people are going to look at the Bible and put it on the shelf with Mother Goose's fairy tales and all the other wonderful books that human beings have created to give them some meaning, and it will just be looked at as another book.
And for those of you who look to the Bible for moral lessons and literary qualities, I might suggest a couple of other stories for you. You might want to look at The Three Little Pigs. That's a good one. Has a nice, happy ending. I'm sure you'll like that. Then there's Little Red Riding Hood, although it does have that X-rated part where the big bad wolf actually eats the grandmother, which I didn't care for, by the way. And finally, I've always drawn a great deal of moral comfort from Humpty Dumpty. And there is no God. None, not one, no God, never was. In fact, I'm gonna put it this way. If there is a God, may he strike this audience dead. See, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Everybody's okay. All right? Tell you what. I'll raise the stakes a little bit. If there is a God, may he strike me dead. See? Nothing happened. Oh, wait. Got a little cramp in my leg. And my balls hurt.
And of course, there's Carlin's famous big club routine, which I'll show next. This is a big part of what deceived so many people into thinking he's anti-establishment. While watching, keep in mind that there are rules to how this creation operates. The Satanic controllers must tell us what they're doing and obtain consent for their plan to work. They can tell us however they want, as long as they tell us. In this case, they chose one of their puppet comedians with a fake anti-establishment image, because that way, they get us to laugh and cheer at our own enslavement. It's the ultimate form of mockery.
I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting by a system that threw them overboard 30 years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this f***ing place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long, when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich suckers who don't give a about them. They don't give a about you. They don't give a about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Man. You know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant.
There you have it. Truth in plain sight. They have to tell us the truth somehow. They just choose to do it in such a way where the willfully ignorant can choose to hand-wave, dismiss it as not serious, just a joke, etc. But there's never just one reason for why do they do anything. They also love to mock us. And it's the ultimate form of mockery when they can tell us the truth about our own enslavement right to our faces, and people actually cheer and clap at their own enslavement. Another reason is to gain our consent, conscious or subconscious, which they need for their plan to work. Anyhow, here's one last clip of Carlin.
I sort of gave up on the human race and gave up on the American dream and culture and nation, and decided that I didn't care about the outcome. And that gave me a lot of freedom from a kind of distant platform to be sort of amused, a kind of, to watch the whole thing with a combination of wonder and pity, and try to put that into words.
Not caring about the outcome, what do you mean by that?
Not having an emotional stake in whether this experiment with human beings works. I really don't care. I love people as I meet them one by one. People are just wonderful as individuals. You see the whole universe in their eyes if you look carefully. But as soon as they begin to group, as soon as they begin to clot, when there are 5 of them, or 10, or even groups as small as 2, they begin to change. They sacrifice the beauty of the individual for the sake of the group.
For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm there with them. Matthew 18:20.
I decided it was all under the control of groups now, whether it's business, religion, political people, or what, and I would distance myself from wishing for a good outcome. Let it do what it's going to do, and I'll enjoy it as an entertainment.